If you are vegan or you are considering going full plant-based and you are tired of all the people suddenly turning into nutritionists when you bring up your dietary choices, this video is for you. In this video you will learn 3 things: what an actual clean plant-based diet is, how to implement the things that people will tell you are hard to implement on a plant-based diet, like iron, for example, zinc, omega-3, and most importantly B12, which everybody is talking about. What people are doing wrong, which leads them to be sicker than when they were having a meat-based diet or an omnivore diet versus a vegan one, and how to build complete proteins inside of your body so you can recover and build muscles even on a plant-based diet. And note on this that as a vegan, I was able to build 6 kilos of muscles within 1 year, going to the gym most of the days, but still. My story started from questioning things, because when I left home when I was 23 years old, I was eating everything. I come from one of the places on earth that serves the best food on the planet, and you can argue this as much as you want. No, my food is better than yours, but I really come from one of the best places, one of the best regions in the world for food. Everything that you are craving for comes from there. Tortellini, ravioli, piadina, crescione, which, if you don't know, is the best thing you can eat during summer. And also we have the best meat you can get access to, including Fiorentina and of course prosciutto di Parma, Parmigiano Reggiano. Everything is there, literally. So for me it was very hard to leave home, and it was even harder to establish a vegan, first vegetarian, diet. You see, coming from a place like this, it was very hard for me to distance myself from animal products, and it was even harder for me to go back home and explain to my mom I'm vegan now. My journey started in New Zealand. I went there and I lived in Auckland, and I was sharing the flat with a woman that one day she told me, you have to watch this documentary, and mind, if you're gonna watch this, it's gonna be intense. But back then in 2014, veganism was not as broad as it is today. So one night she goes to work and I'm watching this on the couch, and I'm actually finding myself kneeling down and crouching on the couch because this thing was extremely intense. This was the product of activists sneaking into factories, into slaughterhouses, and filming everything that was happening there. And by that day I was horrified, and I started investigating things, even things happening in my country and in my region. And unfortunately, making a product ethical costs more money, so many companies do not do this, resulting in the animals suffering way more than they should. And I understand the logic. We need meat in order to survive, we need meat in order to regenerate the body, to build muscles, but it's not always true. And the moment I tried for myself and I saw that my blood tests were staying the same, regardless of not eating meat and plus putting up some muscles consistently without losing anything or without getting negative results, I decided to make the switch. And at first I went vegetarian for many years, and then also thanks to my ex-girlfriend I made the shift from vegetarian to vegan. For example, before her I was eating canned beans, and now I hydrate every bean that I eat the night before and I eat it the day after, and it's fantastic. You can do so many things with beans. I learned how to use spices in the right way, and with this I mean there is a spice that works better with a certain type of food, and there are spices which purpose is to heat up the body and some to cool down the body. And the moment you learn all the effects of these spices, there are hundreds of them. Even if you go in a shop and you find just 10, 20, there are plenty more. And if you learn what they do to your body, you will have access to your own pharmacy every single day. Every time I said to people at the beginning that I was vegan, I got one question all the time: how do you build muscles? How do you get the protein from the food? And this is a common misconception, because a complete protein is made of 9 amino acids. In order to be called complete, all those 9 need to be present in the food that you eat. But most people don't know that even if one food is lacking some of the amino acids, for example, it has just 7, and you introduce 2 amino acids from another food, this all in a sudden becomes a complete protein in your body. And the most basic thing you can do is rice and legumes, because rice lacks on an amino acid, and legumes mostly they lack on 1 amino acid. So by putting them together, they form a match made in heaven, and all in a sudden you have a complete protein in your body. And of course you always have to look for toxicity in the food. For example, some kind of rices contain high level of heavy metals. So you outsource your initial product and then you take the best possible quality and you mix them together. And all in a sudden, you have a complete protein and you can build muscles. The second thing I hear people saying a lot is that as a vegan, it's hard to introduce B12. And I agree with this, but people do not know that the meat they eat, the cows, for example, they're given B12 supplements. Look at the birds. Amazing. I love this place. Your food is given supplements so you can absorb the B12 that naturally you wouldn't be able to absorb. So if you have a garden and you are growing parsley, for example, you get the parsley out of your garden, you wash it properly so the soil is gone, and when you chop your parsley and you introduce it into your body, all in a sudden you have a little amount of B12. The other thing is using citrus and oranges, vitamin C, right? So when you make your food, you add a bit of lemon to your legumes and you add a little bit of orange to anything containing iron. And for me, my choice for food is always oranges and spirulina, because vitamin C increases the amount of iron that you're going to absorb, because there are two types of iron, the one that comes from meat and the one that comes from vegetable. And the one that comes from vegetable is not as concentrated as the one that comes from meat. Vitamin C drastically increases non-heme iron that you find in plants. So if you add it to your spirulina, for example, you're going to absorb way much more iron than normally without the vitamin C. Dark leafy greens with a squirt of lemon and the magic is done. Same effects. It will help you to absorb more iron. Some things that you introduce into your body will deter the absorption of nutrients. For example, if you drink coffee or tea during meals or within 1 hour from your meals, the body will leach nutrients out of itself. So try to avoid coffee and tea 1 hour before any meal. And this is the worst thing that happens in Italy, because people are getting their espresso right after the meal. And guess what happens? Omega-3. And this is another thing that people don't understand. Omega-3 is found on fish, right? But where does fish get the omega-3 from? Algae. And algae is like mushrooms. The location is important, because where the algae or the mushrooms grow up in, the environment matters. Because if the environment is toxic or full of radiation, the algae or the mushroom will absorb everything from the terrain and will transfer it to you when you eat it. So make sure you get your algae and your mushrooms from places that are safe, where the soil is healthy and clean, which means do not buy from China, buy from Canada instead. Lentils, spinach, dark chocolate, pumpkin seeds, quinoa are all good sources of iron. If you buy algae of any kind, make sure that it's not processed with canola oil, because if you buy the algae sheets, canola oil 100%. So make sure you browse your brands and you get the cleanest possible algae you can find. There is Atlantic, which is less polluted than Pacific. So if you buy, for example, Dulce Flakes, which is an algae from Atlantic and Pacific, choose Atlantic if you can. Zinc is found in legumes, but pitates in vegetables can reduce the absorption of zinc. So one thing you can do is to soak your legumes overnight, and if you want to get it to the max, you make sure that they sprout, so your absorption of zinc increases a lot. They will tell you you will need dairy for calcium absorption, but calcium can be found in any vegetables out there. So on a plant-based diet, you will definitely cover your intake. Vitamin D is extremely important, because without it, your calcium absorption will be reduced or compromised. So make sure you get plenty of sun exposition. And if you live in a country where winter is mostly dark, make sure you take steps to increase your vitamin D absorption. The one thing that I keep answering to people that ask me why I turned vegan, except for honey, I consume a lot of honey, is that I do not understand why you have to kill an animal if you don't have to. I mean, I understand going to the woods and practicing some hunting skills with a bow and killing the animal because you need it for survival, but if you have the option of maintaining an optimal state of health, building muscles and recovering your body with a clean diet that you can outsource from a farmer with veggies and legumes and other things, why not? And you will hear so many things against veganism, but if you start studying how food interacts into your body and how to recreate the same things, like how to create a complete protein, where to absorb all the things that I listed already from in nature, from the things you eat, in a clean way, non-toxic way, you will start building your own chemistry lab, because you know how to turn things into what the body really needs without having to kill anybody. The real reason, I think, is not for health, because when I was in Italy, I had psoriasis on my head, on my eyebrows, on my beard, on my face. I didn't have a beard back then when I left home at 23, but it was getting so bad in winter that I was bleeding from my head. And back then I didn't know what it was, but it was definitely the diet, 100%. Psoriasis can be a nervous thing that you inherited from traumas or you transported growing up from traumas, but it's also the gastrointestinal tract that is toxic, so you have to remove the toxicity. But if it's a nervous thing, you need to go through a process to unravel things inside of your mind. But for me back then was a diet which was based on a lot of sugars, which was horrible for me, and it was resulting in this. Because this is the other thing, you will meet a lot of people that say I'm vegan, but you will see that they don't understand veganism, because veganism, in my opinion, is not to stop eating animal products and then going for the processed food, the Beyond Meat burgers, all the protein bars, and all the things that contain more than 3 ingredients and have been produced in a factory or in a lab. Because I never seen tofu growing up from the soil. And I have my tofu, I marinated in soy sauce and spices, and it's delicious. But this happens 5 or 3 times a month, while most of my diet is based on fresh legume that I rehydrate, and vegetables of any kind, and mushrooms, because I know how to combine all these things, because I was lucky enough to have a background as a chef, to learn the expertise in the kitchen by cooking. And I understand most people don't have this, but if you want to make the shift, the main thing you have to learn is how to turn any food into something nutritious. So you get the raw ingredient, the broccoli, the soy, the legumes, anything that comes out of the ground, comes from a tree, and you turn it into food. If you are one of those vegans that they claim to be vegan, and then they buy everything from a shelf, from a fridge, which is processed, you will see these people's skin being pale and white because there is no blood circulation. They like the nutrients, so after a while they have to stop and they will blame veganism for ruining their life, while in reality they did not understand that if you make the shift, you have to cover all those gaps that you are leaving behind because you're not introducing meat, which is a very nutritional dense food, into your body anymore. The other thing, if you decide to stick to carnivore diet, like many advocates out there, including doctors, are, you have to consider that meat, apart from all the suffering that it comes from, and I do not want to be that guy in this video, it takes 24 to 72 hours based on the density of the meat, the type of meat, and your gastrointestinal tract to be digested. And this can be resulting in a lot of things that your body needs to go through. For example, digesting requires a lot of pushing, which will eventually, not for all the people, provoke some hernias in your stomach because of the pushing. I follow a guy that is a bodybuilder and is a vegan, and this is a fantastic example because he looks good, he looks healthy, he looks beautiful. If you look at a doctor that is proactively promoting this, you want him to look healthy, otherwise he will not be credible, not become an authority, and he will be looked down because what he's preaching seems like it's not working. So if you are doing this, make sure you understand and learn the principles so you can create your own methods. There is a book called How Not to Die from a doctor. In his book, and this is the greatest thing, he covers a lot of things, and this book became very controversial because they say, no, he cherry-picked all the studies to promote veganism and to demonize the carnivore diet or a diet based on eating meat. But the book is divided in different chapters. How not to die of cardiovascular disease, how not to die of respiratory disease, how not to die of iatrogenic disease, which is when you enter in a hospital and they do mistakes and you die because of those mistakes. And he talks over and over about all the causes, all the diseases, and all the complications that eating meat over long periods of time provokes. And my favorite one, and this is very light, but you can definitely feel it, is the fact that a high consumption of meat eventually will influence the scent of your skin, and even worse, of your genitalia, because digesting meat produces a protein called putrescine, which is basically a protein that smells bad. So if you ingest a lot of meat every single week, your body will get that rancid smell and it will start sweating it, and people will feel it. I have the clear memory of dating a vegan, and I remember after jogging together or doing some exercises together, completely sweaty, and she didn't smell bad. And it wasn't until later on in life that I figured out that it's harder for everything that you expel from your skin, which is your second kidney and your second lungs, and from your rectum to smell as bad as somebody that eats meat consistently. The other thing is, if you shift to a vegan diet and you do not understand the principles and what is required for your body to have all the nutritional values that you need to introduce on a daily basis, you will have cravings. So a lot of people I see, they turn vegan and then they eat a lot of shit, a lot of of sugary stuff, a lot of processed stuff. Because of the glycemic index swinging like a roller coaster, they will keep eating a lot of stuff because they are always hungry, because they get the signal that they need more and more and more to cover the glucose that is swinging in their body. So make sure, really, make sure you get the principles done if you decide to make the switch. Before COVID hit, I was going to the gym 7 days a week, from half an hour to 2 hours every single day, because it was in my apartment, and I was able to go from 71 kilos to 78 kilos. And for all my life, I have been 70 kilos, 71 kilo. And then I look at my body one day and I felt strong. I was lifting a lot of weight and I saw my body transforming completely. And I saw women and the people walking in the street reacting to this. And this is the first time in my life when I was wearing shirts and I noticed women noticing me, which was something that never happened to me because all my life I've been skinny, like the guy from The Machinist, you know, the movie. But then all in a sudden I started putting up weight in a good way. Chest, which I never had, and some abs and some biceps. Yes, the biceps were the most fun part. And I felt I was strong. I could lift my body up. I was running a lot on top of that. So it was a great period of my life. And every time that you say, I am vegan, it seems like everybody is switching to becoming a nutritionist all in a sudden, and they challenge your opinion. Bitch, try to go on a vegan diet and you will figure things out, or you will leave the diet because it's making you sick. If you are stepping into this diet believing, oh, I'm vegan now, and then you just buy processed food, you will not survive this, I assure you. And you will not see your body thriving and growing muscle as you should be. And by any means, you can grow muscle in any possible way you want, as long as you introduce proteins. There was a bodybuilder that won some championships that just sustained his diet by just eating at McDonald's. What you introduce, sure, is a protein, but it comes with a lot of toxicity. When I was a kid, I always loved animals. I was extremely curious. I could spend hours and hours in a forest just observing and climbing trees and being a voyeur for animals. And growing up, I found these books that will give you an understanding how everything is connected to everything else. The name is Peter Wahlberg, and the books are The Hidden Life of Trees, The Secret Life of Animals, and then he wrote 2 more books. But these books are fascinating because this guy is a forester. Basically, he owns a forest in Germany, and he takes people around explaining how everything is connected to each other and the intricacies of how nature works, including the trees. For example, if a tree grows and drops a seed, the mycelium is connecting the seed to the tree, so they communicate to each other. The tree recognizes that the seed is his own child and sends more nutrients to the seed so it can grow stronger. And it does the same for animals. And if you understand that we live in a world where everything is connected together, and you're here to leave all the people you make a connection with better than how you found them, you understand that not to harm animals makes a lot of sense. And people that say, it's always been like this, my parents, my grandparents used to kill animals and we used to feed on them, sure, you don't have to find excuses, because if you have a second option and is as good as the first one, why killing animals? I don't get it. For me, it's just a lack of empathy. And the moment you grow your consciousness up, you will figure this out. But if you don't, or you don't want to, well, just take the best out of it. Know that there is a second option. If not a better option, a second option. And if your argument is in 100 grams of meat, there are 26 to 27 grams of proteins. And if you eat almonds, for example, there are maybe 7, 10, 20 grams of protein. And you need to eat 200 grams, but then they will make you sick. I understand, but you can combine things. And if you want a list, I will put a link in the description where you can get a list on how to outsource everything that you need from nature in different ways as a vegan, in a simple way that everybody can understand and take action on easily. Right now the world is at a crossroad. There are people staying with the old because they don't want to learn the new one. There are people that are comfortable with the old and they don't want to make the shift because they love eating meat. And there are industries taking over and producing meat in a lab, 3D printing them with no data on the effects that they will result on. But in my opinion, you don't want to be the first. You don't want to be the data. You want to distance yourself as much as possible from the comfort that comes from buying something that looks like meat and tastes like meat, but is made with things that were synthesized in a laboratory. And then 5-10 years down the road, you discover that, oh, it was actually asbestos for the digestive tract. There is nothing natural about this. Somebody is profiting about this and seeing you as a number, and the stock needs to go up. So they will do anything in their power to make as much money as they can without being concerned about you at all. So go the hard way, stick to the principles that are there for anybody to learn. And this can be anything from Ayurveda to natural medicine medicine to how to use spices, the basics, and then you can draw your method out of it. If you want the exact combinations of food that you need to put together in order to create a complete protein, all the other food that you can take and outsource from nature to cover your nutritional needs, comment food and I will send them to you. And if you want to develop a system by applying the principles so you can create your own method to maintain and keep up optimal health and transfer it to your loved ones, to your children, to your partner, subscribe to my newsletter and you will receive updates every single week.